Hi class, today we'll be talking about World War I, or the Great War as it was called. And we're going to take a look at how it will engulf the war, involve so many countries and nations. It's going to exhaust and virtually bankrupt Europe. And yet it's also going to promote production and consumption on a mass scale like none we've ever seen. So from about August of 1914 to November of 1918, most of the battles are going to be fought on European soil, but it is truly a global war and will involve countless countries, countless soldiers from all across the world. And what we're going to see is that European countries' efforts to rebuild their economies after the Great War by doing things like cutting expenses and returning to the gold standard, and even the harsh peace treaty that Germany will be forced to sign after the war ultimately is going to cause something called the Great Depression, class, which directly affects the entire global community and economy, not just a United States problem, okay? And you're going to see as you study the chapter, what will emerge is three strikingly different visions for building a better world after World War I. We're going to be looking at liberal democracy, we're going to be looking at a form of authoritarianism, and we're also going to be looking at the rise of anti-colonialism. Now, these differing viewpoints, unfortunately, are going to lead us right into World War II, but that's for a different time. So let's take a minute and look at the causes of war. They're very complex and complicated, but I'm going to simplify the best way that I can. First of all, you have nationalist rivalries. All right, remember, Great Britain had been the preeminent power in the 19th century, and many countries were trying to catch up. Now, when the Germany economy surpasses Britain at the turn of the century, and Germany begins to build a navy, things become very tense in the European neighborhood. A rise of militarism is going to become paramount to all of the European neighbors. Everybody wants to get in on the act. And all of this rivalry between Great Britain and Germany, it's going to lead to a formation of rival alliances. Who's going to be my friend? Who's going to work with me? And we're going to need to see who the big players are in World War I. So first of all, we're going to see the Central Powers, and that's going to be Germany and Austria-Hungary. We're also going to see the Triple Alliance, the Triple Entente, the Allied Powers later is what they're called. Great Britain, France, and Russia. Now, these alliances look simple, class, but it's anything but simple. For example, Turkey is going to join the Central Powers. Japan's going to join the Allies. Yes, Japan. Then other smaller countries are going to start joining the party. Everyone has to pick a side eventually, right? So Russia is going to end up with its own problems and will drop out of this, the Allied agreement because of a revolution in their country. And then at the end, the United States will officially join the Allies. So too much to talk about there. When the war finally erupts in 1914, the ground really had long been prepared. So remember we talked once before about Germany taking over France's Alsace-Lorraine region? Okay, that's going to flare up. Remember all the competition that we talked about in the scramble for Africa? We're also going to see a buildup of new military technologies, new weapons unheard of before. The machine gun has been improved. Airplanes are going to be used in this war. Yes, the cavalry is still around and blimps, but by and far, this is an incredible modern war. Now, most are expecting this to be a short, decisive conflict. According to one propaganda poster, the boys will be home for Christmas. But it will unexpectedly drag on for more than 4 long, bloody years. It's a total war, class, mobilizing entire societies and producing unprecedented horror. This is a good map to take a look at, the European and Middle Eastern theaters, a little bit of that. Most of the fighting, as I mentioned, in World War I despite its designation as a world war, is actually going to occur in Europe. Yes, it will involve a lot of combatants. Millions of soldiers are going to fight on both sides. But the actual territorial advances that will occur during World War I are relatively small. So this is a really good map of some of the major battle sites that we'll be talking about. Verdun's here, the Somme, the Marne. I'll mention Chateau Thierry and Belleau-Wood at the end. So take a look at the map. This and subsequent modern wars are going to really require propaganda to mobilize hatred against the enemy. We need to convince the population of the justness of our cause. We need to enlist active support and cooperation of neutral countries, and we need to strengthen the support of our allies. Now, the nations are going to really rely on propaganda during World War I. It's going to focus on several things. First of all, it's going to focus on symbols and slogans of nationhood to inspire patriotism. It's going to focus on things like the atrocities committed by Germany and Austro-Hungarian wars. So the Allies are going to produce posters and pamphlets and material. It's going to emphasize their barbarian acts and provide justification for this bloody conflict. We're dying out there. Why are we dying? Well, according to some of the Allied propaganda, Germans are out there raping nuns in Belgium and they're nailing kittens to the doors. Not necessarily true, class, but it inflames the public, right? So from the beginning of World War I, both sides in the conflict are going to use propaganda. I'll mention some German propaganda in a minute. And it really shapes the internal and international opinion of the war. We're sending our boys to die. Why are we doing that? And also, we need you to be on our side. We need more allies. You might be next in the German march to take over the world. So also consider their use of women and children in the propaganda as symbols and victims and homemakers holding down the home front during World War I. Any good man would fight for his family, right? Now, class, think about this as we move on into more contemporary times. Do we still use propaganda today? I would challenge you to think about that and let me know what you decide. So let's talk about the spark that actually ignites hostilities. What is the spark that actually starts the war? Class, it's 1914, and it's going to be the assassination of the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne, the Archduke Francis Ferdinand and his pregnant wife Sophie. They have traveled to Sarajevo, Bosnia. This is one of their colonized territories, so they're visiting colonized territories. Now, this alone should not have really triggered a world war, but it does. So let me give you the details. It's an interesting story. Someone threw a bomb into their car in a parade. The bomb bounced off their convertible into the street, and it detonated under the car, wounding about 16 to 20 people. It did not injure Ferdinand and his pregnant wife, Sophie, at the time. The assassin, who was part of what's called the Black Hand, a secret terrorist society trying to stop the Austro-Hungarian rule in Serbia, swallows a cyanide pill and jumped in the local river. Unfortunately, his suicide attempt failed because he had used an old cyanide pill and it only induced vomiting. Plus, the river was only a few feet deep due to a hot, dry summer, and police dragged him out of the river. He was severely beaten by the crowd, taken into custody, so they're finding out who was attempting to assassinate the Francis Ferdinand, okay? Now, class, let me ask you a question. When you're visiting somewhere and there is an assassination attempt on your life, what would you do? Would you head home? Would you go into hiding? I'm pretty sure that I would leave the area, right? Not these two. Ferdinand was very indignant that this has happened. He starts arguing with the mayor and the governor, and he gets very upset. How dare someone try to assassinate me? Eventually, they did make the choice to get back into the parade motorcade and into another convertible. Another assassin is close by, shoots them at close range, and kills them both. Now, Austria-Hungary is going to use this as an event and a pretext to crush Serbia. It's their colony, and they're trying to crush this dynamic Slavic nationalism. There is a magnet for Slavic nationalism in this region, and they're going to use this as an example. They're going to use this. You're not going to raise your head against colonialism and colonial attempts, right? So Serbia has a big brother and a protector by the name of the Imperial Russia. This is going to be ruled, they are ruled at this point in time by the Tsar Nicholas II. And Austria-Hungary has its important ally and protector in Germany. So instead of declaring immediate war, Austria-Hungary spends a month back and forth with Germany, backroom intrigues develop, and finally, Germany, under Kaiser Wilhelm II, issues Austria the blank check they needed. Listen, we're going to back you up, buddy. We're going to do whatever it takes. Y'all just do whatever you want to do down there. And it allows them to move forward with these ridiculous wartime ultimatums for the Serbs. And then, incredibly, class, Kaiser Bill goes off on holiday. Not kidding. Austria-Hungary ultimately attacks in Serbia, leading to Russian mobilization orders to support and help their beloved brothers. And the war class becomes a reality. Now, interestingly, when Kaiser Bill returns from his holiday, there will be a flurry of telegrams ensuing between him and his cousin, yes, the Tsar Nicholas is his cousin, to try to settle things down. He comes back, he's shocked. Russia's mobilized against us. How dare they? It's not going to be to any avail. You can read the Willie Nicky telegrams. I've pulled a link in for you, class, so take a look at those. It's somewhat amusing if it hadn't meant so many people had to die because of their stupidity. So finally, Kaiser Bill declares, "Gentlemen, you will rue the day that you made me do this," and he signs mobilization orders. So now we have a war. Germany declares war on Russia. Russia declares war on Germany. The French, they're next door. Germany decides we're just going to go ahead and take over the rest of France. We're going to take over Belgium too while all this is going on, our neighbor Belgium. So they declare war on France and Belgium. Great Britain has no choice, class, but to align themselves with France. They hate Germany worse than they do France. Good grief. So what is all this over? What is all this about? Is it over Ferdinand and Sophie's assassination? We just don't, it's just too mind-boggling to comprehend that this is happening. So the assassins had hoped to trigger an independent movement of Slavic territories in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, remember, and unite them with Serbia. That didn't happen. Worldwide war will ensue instead. Talk about unintended consequences.